Republicans are very, very happy with the current immigration system. Earlier this month, Iowa Congressman Steve King tried to deflect attention away from conservative fat cats and their business interests exploiting undocumented workers with his rant on cantaloupe-thighed immigrants smuggling marijuana. The reality is that Republican donors love the current system because they can pay illegally low wages to undocumented workers. They can steal from them. They can even physically and sexually abuse and exploit those workers because they can get away with it. They get away with it by simply telling the workers, explicitly or implicitly, that complaining or speaking out will get them turned over to ICE. But Steve King and his fellow Republican toadies for big business don't want you to think about an exploitable workforce when you think about undocumented immigrants. Instead, they want you to think about this.
For everyone who's a valedictorian, there's another 100 out there that they weigh 130 pounds and they've got calves the size of cantaloupes because they're hauling 75 pounds of marijuana across the desert.
But immigration reform is not about pot and it's not about drug smuggling. It's about economics. There are currently 11 million undocumented workers in the United States, and the everyday reality for most of these undocumented immigrants isn't the drug-running, border-jumping world that Steve King and other far-right congressmen talk about. It's a reality of the daily fear of every knock on the door. And until Congress passes meaningful immigration reform, it will continue to be a reality of fear. For more on this, I'm joined by Jen Poo, Director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance. Jen, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us. There was a massive civil disobedience event this morning on Capitol Hill to protest GOP Republican inaction on immigration reform. How did that go?
That's exactly right. It was a powerful statement. More than 30 leaders, including a number of women, mothers, got arrested today to say that we can't wait another day. And this delay, this stalling that's happening in the House is just stalling what needs to happen in order to end the suffering of millions of people in this country, millions of people who are contributing to our economy, who are families, mothers, people who are already building this country with us.
Jen, I'm curious your thoughts on my kind of back-of-the-envelope analysis of this situation, that there are businesses and billionaires in this country who are quite happy having a highly exploitable, largely terrified and low-wage workforce, and that might be the cause of much of the opposition to immigration reform. Does that make sense?
I think that is definitely a factor here, and I also know for a fact that the majority of Americans are ready and want immigration reform, and they want a roadmap to citizenship for the 11 million undocumented who are stuck in the shadows. I think about people like my friend Rick, who depends on an undocumented immigrant to take care of his elderly mother in Staten Island every day, and wouldn't he love to know that his caregiver has a pathway to citizenship and doesn't risk deportation on her way to work every day. I mean, this question is a question for every American, and there's broad popular support in this country to get this done.
Absolutely. Your organization represents domestic workers specifically. What sort of dangers and threats do undocumented domestic workers face because of the current system?
Well, domestic workers are already working in very isolated conditions, despite the fact that they do some of the most important work in the country, taking care of our loved ones, our children, our families, our homes. They are working in the shadows, isolated, incredibly vulnerable. There are very little standards and protections to regulate what's happening to them, and employers are essentially, it's like the Wild West. And so some have wonderful employers who treat them with respect, and you'll find the whole other end of the spectrum where employers can take advantage of the fact that the workplaces are hidden and the workers are isolated, and threats of deportation and family separation compound this fear and vulnerability to abuse that this workforce faces. And it's a largely women workforce, many of whom are mothers supporting their whole families on their income.
Yeah. Jen, you had the rally today in Washington, D.C. What is planned? Right. What's coming up? What's the strategy to move this thing forward?
In communities around the country, families, women are going to be mobilizing, calling on the House to come together, to unite and move forward on a path to citizenship, and one that treats women and children fairly. This is an issue that is going to touch every community in America, and when legislators go home, they're going to hear from us, and there's going to continue to be actions and escalation, and families who are going to stand up, and women who are going to be taking an oath to have a House united for immigration reform. So you're going to continue to see a wave of action throughout the month of August and until we get this done.